Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into ashwagandha. You've probably seen this ancient herb popping up everywhere, right? It's in supplements, drinks, you name it. But what does the actual science say about all its big promises for stress, sleep, and performance? Well, let's get into it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the basics. What even is ashwagandha? Then we'll jump into its main claim to fame, which is stress. After that, we'll explore how tackling stress creates this awesome ripple effect on things like sleep and even athletic performance. And to wrap it all up, we'll go through a practical guide on how to use it and what the big picture really looks like.
All right, let's kick things off with section 1. What exactly is ashwagandha? Because before we can get to all the cool benefits, you got to understand what we're actually dealing with here. At its heart, ashwagandha is this incredible herb that comes from traditional Indian medicine, where it's been used for literally centuries. It belongs to this really cool class of plants called adaptogens, and the name says it all. They're thought to help your body adapt to and, better handle stress. But here's the catch, and this is super important. Ashwagandha is a plant, not some perfectly standardized pill made in a lab. And just like a tomato grown in your backyard might taste different from one grown somewhere else, the chemical profile of this plant can change a lot depending on the soil, the weather, all that stuff. And that variability is a big reason why, historically, the results from studies could be a little inconsistent. So that leads us right into its most studied benefit, the main event, stress. Honestly, this is the #1 reason most people are curious about ashwagandha in the first place. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. We have all this history, all these traditional claims, but does it actually work? Is there real modern science to back it up? Well, the research gives us a surprisingly clear answer. Yes. In one major 60-day study, people taking ashwagandha saw their levels of cortisol, that's your body's main stress hormone, drop by an average of 27%. That is a huge drop. And check this out. This chart just lays it all out there. Look at that massive drop for the ashwagandha group. Now compare that to the placebo group, where you can see basically nothing happened. This tells us it's not just a feeling of being less stressed. It's a real, measurable change happening inside your body. So how on earth is it doing this? Well, scientists think it works in a few ways. First, it seems to play nicely with GABA, which is basically the chill-out signal in your brain. It's like a natural brake pedal. Second, it might help turn down the volume on something called the HPA axis. Think of that as your body's central alarm system for stress. And finally, there's some evidence it might help keep your thyroid function nice and stable. Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. When you lower a big deal hormone like cortisol, it doesn't just stop there. It kicks off this amazing chain reaction of other positive changes, what we're calling the ripple effect. The first and most obvious place you see that ripple, your sleep. I mean, it just makes sense, right? When your body isn't stuck in fight or flight mode, it can actually rest and recover properly. And this isn't just a theory. This link is so well established that it's been confirmed in meta-analyses, which is pretty much the gold standard of scientific evidence. And what happens when you get better sleep? Yep, your brain thanks you. Now, the research shows the improvements in things like memory and attention are pretty modest, but they are there. Plus, there's some early evidence that it might even have neuroprotective qualities, kind of like a shield for your brain cells. And that ripple just keeps on going, this time heading straight for our endocrine system. This is where we start to see some fascinating impacts on our hormones. Okay, and this is where the effects get really specific depending on your gender. In men, studies have consistently found a modest boost in testosterone, somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15%. But, and this is a really important point for any women listening, in women, no significant change was found. So if you were concerned about any unwanted hormonal shifts, the current data suggests that's not something you need to worry about. All right, so we've covered the mind, we've covered hormones. Now, let's switch gears and talk about pure physical performance, because the benefits don't stop with just mental wellness. Okay, get ready for this, because the numbers here are actually pretty wild. The research shows a 10 to 20% increase in something called VO2 max. And let me be clear, for any serious athlete, even a tiny bump of 1 or 2% is a game changer. A 10 to 20% jump, that is absolutely massive. So what the heck is VO2 max anyway? You can think of it as the ultimate measurement of your aerobic fitness. It's literally the maximum amount of oxygen your body can take in and use when you're going all out. A higher VO2 max means you have better endurance, and it's a top-tier indicator of your overall heart health. And hey, if you're getting curious about your own level right now, you don't actually need a fancy lab to get a rough idea. This is called the Cooper test. It's pretty simple. You just run as far as you can for 12 minutes, measure that distance, and then plug it into the formula you see here. It's a really cool way to get a baseline for your own fitness.
Okay, so we've talked about all the awesome benefits. But now for the really important part. How do you actually use this stuff safely and effectively? And first things first, let's talk safety. Look, ashwagandha is considered overwhelmingly safe, but it's really important to be totally transparent here. The source material points out that there have been 5 reported cases of liver damage linked to its use. Now, when you think about the millions upon millions of people taking it, that makes it extremely rare. But it is something you should definitely be aware of. So, with that in mind, here's a pretty standard way people approach using it. First up, dosage. It's always smart to start low, maybe around 225 milligrams. A more common daily dose is somewhere between 500 and 1,000. Next, duration. It's a good idea to cycle it. Think 1 or 2 months on, then take a little break. Third, and this is key, monitor yourself. Just pay attention to how you feel. If you happen to get blood work done, the liver enzymes to look at are ALT and AST. And finally, synergies. Some people find that combining it with L-theanine gives them an even better anti-anxiety effect.
All right, let's bring it all home and look at the big picture. After all this, what are the key things you should really walk away with today? So, let's do a quick recap. Who might find this the most useful? Well, definitely anyone dealing with high levels of stress or anxiety. People who are just looking to get better quality sleep, men who might be interested in a modest, natural boost to testosterone, and of course, athletes who want to crank up their endurance and improve that VO2 max. And that really leaves us with one final thought. We've gone through the ancient history, the modern science, and the practical guide on how to use it. So the question for you is, could this ancient herb be a modern tool for your well-being? Thanks for digging into the science with me today.